a little notification that pops up at the top of the page just to notify you all that we are recording this webinar. So I will ask you all to make sure that your microphones are muted and your videos stay off throughout this webinar. It will just allow the streaming to come through nice and quickly and clearly. And we will also have this webinar accessible on our AFAR series webpage as well, so it will be a public video. So please ensure that your videos remain switched off throughout the session, as this will be recorded. So this is our session number 7 today. The topic today is the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework. So we are very fortunate to be joined by Craig Roberts today, who will be talking us through the new framework and how this looks in its new format. And also in regards to our aquatic fitness and recreation industry PD series, there are reasons that we are hosting these PD sessions at this time. So in this uncertain and challenging times, key aquatic recreation and fitness industry organisations have come together and taken the decision to step up the effort to support engagement and professional development during this state of emergency. The outcome of this collaboration is the decision to offer free professional development opportunities to anybody associated with the aquatic and fitness industry 4 times a week between April and July. So these are all hosted from Tuesdays to Fridays, different topics each week and targeting different audiences each day. So you can find out more information and also view past webinars that have been recorded on the AFAR series webpage, which we will put a link to in the chat now. So just going through a few housekeeping things, I have mentioned a few before. Please do keep your microphones off. We have muted you all already, or most of you have muted yourselves already as well. So please do make sure that these remain muted so that we can hear the speaker nice and clearly throughout the presentation. Please also keep your cameras off. As I said, this will be recorded and it also allows for the streaming to come through nice and clearly as well if everybody's camera remains off. If you have any questions at any time during the webinar, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat. While you're thinking of them, pop them in there, and we have the Swimming and Water Safety Education team on the webinar today as well, and we will all be accessing your questions, your comments, collaborating them all, and then we will attend to them at the end of the session. We would also like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So just to recap from last week, we did offer a PD session for our fantastic swim teachers. We were joined by 3 excellent presenters who provided some really fantastic information, tips and tricks for all our swim teachers out there. You can view the recorded webinar of that session on our AFAR series webpage, and I do encourage you to watch that and share that with your colleagues as well. So I would now like to introduce Craig Roberts, who is the National Manager of Operations at Royal Lifesaving Society Australia, who will be talking us through the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework. So Craig, if you could please unmute your microphone and share your screen, and everybody enjoy this fantastic presentation by Craig Roberts.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework, but I'm actually going to take you back about 3 or 4 years to give you a bit of a foundation of where the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework has come from and what it looks like today. The first part of the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework actually came from some research and consultation that was first published about 3 or 4 years ago. And that research, if you're not aware of it, if you're not across it, is some key elements. was benchmarking Australian children's swimming and water safety skills. The original piece of work was done for primary school age children, which looks at the preschool ages and also the high school ages of children. This research is the initial one. I'm just going to show you and share with you some key figures. These are national figures in this sort of space, but there is obviously some research that's certainly been done with Lifesaving Victoria in this space also that's specific to Victoria. I'm only going to give you a quick couple of key points in terms of the research, but hopefully a lot of this most people do know as well. The first one that you'd be able to see on your screen there is the age of children in swimming lessons, and by private we mean that this is not part of the school system. Obviously, there's some great numbers in there, but when you look at the downward trend, certainly from the age of 6 downwards, that's a large concern for the industry when we start to get some of those lower numbers, especially around the 10, 11, and 12 age group, which hopefully most people know is a concern for children staying in our swimming and water safety programs. While we do know that correlates to our swimming and water safety in terms of relates to drowning numbers, our drowning numbers certainly start to pick up at that 15, 16, and 17-year age group. So part of our correlation with our swimming lessons dropping off can be drawn to some of the increased numbers in our drowning rates as older teenagers and adults as well. But it is certainly for participation as those older primary school age children and those younger secondary school age children really are not getting some of that essential swimming and water safety lessons. Now, this research, just to give you a bit of a background, the research was from small and large metro regional swim schools. It was across a number of different states within Australia and a range of program providers in that sort of space as well. So it really gave us the opportunity to look at the data in that area there. The other one, which is really about what skills are being taught in swimming and water safety sessions. And this is probably the most scary one out of all the results in that sort of space. Out of all the 83,000 children, only 50, just over 50%, if you look at that tread and scull, are only getting some basic sculling techniques, breaststroke and survival backstroke, and then less than 15%. Some of these skills down here, especially your rescues and your survival side strokes in that sort of space. Some of the other key numbers there for you to think about is the achievement. So while I don't have a graph on here, it's the age in which achievement is being reached, and certainly the Lifesaving Victoria and the Victorian government have been fairly vocal in terms of that 50% of children leaving primary school only being able to reach that 50-metre mark. Nationally, at the age of 12, that is 60%. So those children leaving at the age of 12, only 60% of them can swim 50 metres in a swimming pool. The other one, which is related to that graph you see on your screen there, is about treading water. So there's been a benchmark for quite some time, which is about treading water for 2 minutes. Of those 83,000, only 32% of them could actually tread water for 2 minutes at the age of 12. So this was a fairly large wake-up call to the industry and to the sector about what are our children actually learning, and how do we improve the success rate of the outcomes of that. This gives you a bit of a journey of what's happened in the lead up to this, between the research and the communication and consultation, and where we have the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework today. Some of you may not be aware of this, but back in 1999, the Australian Water Safety Council actually adopted a National Swimming and Water Safety Framework. and it's been in place for quite some time. The scary thing about that framework is not many people were aware of it, and not many people actually adopted it or used it in the development of their programs or outcomes, both in private and school side of things as well. In terms of the research, that research was presented at a National Swimming and Water Safety Symposium in 2017. Originally, and that's what you see in terms of this this artist's drawing, which is an executive summary of the presentations of one of the sessions at that symposium. But basically, it was attended by 50 key people from across the sector, both in government, industry, and academia, who presented and workshopped and extensively consulted on a range of issues in terms of swimming and water safety skills for children. From there also, there's a few other things that were happening. The Australian Water Safety Strategy was in development, and obviously there was some key goals as part of that. The Australian Institute of Sport and much of some of the leading countries had also talked about this thing called physical literacy. At the time, it was the draft Australian Physical Literacy Standard, but we now know that to be the actual, the final physical literacy standard has been adopted by the Australian government as well. And many state and territory education departments in various forms as well. Part of this review also looked at the Australian Curriculum Health and Physical Education, as well as some of those state and territory health and physical educations and the mapping of those areas, as well as a number of other pieces of research that had already been undertaken in the swimming and water safety space. Parents' perceptions on swimming and water safety lessons and some of the impacts of swimming and water safety teachers. And all those reports are available on the website. But the journey led to firstly a draft document here and a consultation draft that went out to what was known as the National Swimming and Water Safety Reference Group. So of those 50 people, there was about 35 organisations represented in a National Swimming and Water Safety Reference Group who deliberated and participated in the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework. From there, we had a second symposium in 2018, and that's where the draft National Swimming and Water Safety Framework was first presented, and it identified some of these key areas in terms of the staged approach. A lot of the consultation had talked about that we needed to extend a swimming and water safety framework before primary school as well as beyond primary school in that stage, and we need to look at a holistic approach that could be flexible and adaptable. And one of the key things there was a student-centric approach rather than a teacher-centric approach in what some of the current and modern thinking was around learning frameworks. In 2018 and 19, a range of sort of final drafts and an explanation to the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework were developed and worked on through that National Swimming and Water Safety Reference Group. And today we have the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework, which is just prior to COVID has been receiving signatures and endorsements from various organisations, and I'll go through that later on as well. Just to give you a bit of a snapshot, I'm not necessarily going to go through each one's here, but it gives you a concept of some of the breadth of the consultation. This is just the first representatives from the first National Swimming and Water Safety Symposium. Some of those people turned up for Symposium 2 and 3. We also had different international representatives, certainly New Zealand and Water Safety New Zealand were along for the ride with all three as part of that process as well. But there's been engagement with international bodies as well through the Royal Lifesaving Network and the International Lifesaving Federation. So there is a fairly wide breadth and a mix of some really good researchers there in terms of leaders in their space, both in swimming and water safety and participation. And we've further engaged some more academia since the first symposium in this space as well. Certainly, some of the people behind the health curriculum, the physical health curriculum, as well as the physical literacy standard, and some of the individuals that have been involved with that space as well. So what does the framework look like? The National Swimming and Water Safety Framework is really about enabling individuals to develop the skills and knowledge, but also the attitudes and behaviours to be able to lead safe and active, healthy lives in and around our aquatic environments. And that's a fairly strong, long and powerful statement, but it really stands to serve the purpose of what the framework about. And a real key part of that is supporting a structured and consistent understanding of swimming and water safety education around Australia. So of all those different organisations, we've been able to come up with one framework that allows for programmers, deliverers, and a range of different audiences to have a structured and consistent understanding of what swimming and water safety lessons should be about. In the document, in the framework document, there are 6 principles which are really underlying principles for the framework that the Swimming and Water Safety Reference Group felt was vitally important to the establishment of the framework. And that is fundamentally that everyone should have the opportunity, regardless of age, sex, religion, race, or socioeconomic status, in terms of having the opportunity for swimming and water safety education. We do know from the research and from the programs that are run in our swim schools across Australia, that those from coal communities and low socioeconomic communities do not have the same participation rates, but certainly don't have the same outcome rates in terms of our swimming and water safety sessions as well. So something that the industry really has to be supportive with, in those different players in the swimming and water safety world. Number 2 there is, in terms of entry and progression into the framework, may occur at different stages and different rates. We very recognise that every student is different, regardless of their age or their ability, and it allows for anyone to enter the framework and move through that framework, hopefully in a forward way, but also backwards in order to improve their swimming and water safety abilities as it goes. The framework is adaptable to support achievement, so it's taking into consideration of all those different types of groups, the student-centred approach, so that achievement can be reached at different levels, regardless of what your foundation is throughout your swimming and water safety career. It is fundamentally about structured programs, but one of the key things of the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework is about aquatic recreation as well. That aquatic recreation is vital to an individual's learning, whether it be paddling a board, having fun on the weekends or throughout the week. The aquatic recreation is a vital tool and a supportive tool as part of a swimming and water safety ability as well, and transferring those skills from a structured session into a real life scenario. And the other part that goes hand in hand with that is the range of aquatic environments. Most of our swimming and water safety sessions are done in a swimming pool, but really the highlight in this sort of area is that learning should transition to skills and knowledges in those open waterways. And more we're seeing swim schools and aquatic facilities expand their swimming and water safety sessions into the open water environments there as well. Part of the research if you dig deeper into that research, is that kids were struggling to transfer their skills from a pool environment into that open water environment. And as we go to that 15, 16 and older age group, the open water environment becomes a key risk factor in terms of the drowning numbers as well. And the other part is that there's more than one way to skin a cat, but this framework really aims to provide some consistent language for the sector that allows all those different people, but primarily the facilitators and educators and parents of our swimming water safety sector, to use some consistent terminology in that space. And we now got to a point where we can do that. So who is it for? the reality is that the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework is for a range of people in different contexts. One of the challenges of the Swimming and Water Safety Framework was to meet the needs of these different user groups. So certainly from a government point of view, while industry is one of the largest areas, state governments, be it their health department or their sport department, are one of the biggest players in swimming and water safety education, both in the classroom, but also the skills and knowledge in a practical sense as well. And policy makers and educations and curriculum developers need to know what this framework is about, and we've engaged them from the beginning in this process. And that goes hand in hand with the education sector and those developing those curriculums as well. The other aspect is the aquatic industry, more broadly, whether that be aquatic facilities, program managers, swim school managers and the like, that allows them to develop programs and ensure a broad balanced curriculum is happening at their facility as well. And obviously those at the front, the teachers who are delivering programs, but also our parents and their individuals being children or adults who are participating in Learn to Swim programs as well. So it's got some key aspects there. As part of the release of the Swimming and Water Safety Framework, we'll provide some guidance in terms of specific guidance for these different audiences and what it actually means for them as well. So what are the different components of the framework? The framework is fundamentally made up of 8 different strands, which are subject matter areas, as well as an underpinning of the knowledge and understanding, the skills and abilities, and the attitudes and behaviours. And those 3 areas on the right, I'll let you read the dark blue in particular, excuse me. But a really important part of the framework here is that it's about a holistic way to learning. It's not about the physical skills that a child learns in a pool. It certainly is about the knowledge and understanding of what they're doing and how they can apply that to different situations, and ultimately the attitudes and behaviours they do have, and a positive attitude they have towards both swimming and recreating, but also drowning prevention in that sense as well, and encouraging them to maintain those safe behaviours, and certainly when they get older, for children is to encourage others to those safe behaviours in those aquatic environments. But turning to the 8 strands, the hazards of personal safety is really about those risks and the safety measures that you take, the range of entries and exits that you should do in a range of different environments. And from the lower end of the framework through to there's a gradual progression of all these different types of skills as well. So flotation, swimming, underwater, life-saving skills and rescue skills, as well as a survival sequence. So being able to apply that in a series of activities as well. In the actual document of the framework, these are explained explicitly. But we'll see a picture of the one pager, which really goes into clearly what they actually mean. As part of the framework, there are three stages of developments. Sorry about the headings at the top there. So they're fundamental, acquisition, and application in the 3 stages of development. Each of those stages of development are also broken up into 3 separate development milestones, and I'll explain that next as well. But as you can see in the descriptions there, the fundamental is really about those individuals who have limited or no experience in swimming and water safety, through to those who are building on some of those foundation skills and developing some of those what we would call minimum competencies for any person in and around water, through to that application stage where they're participating in a range of aquatic activities in a range of aquatic environments, and they're starting to utilise those skills not in just for their self-preservation, but also the safety of others as well. In the knowledge skills, the understanding, the attitudes and behaviours, all those 3 areas are also aligned with the different stages of the physical literacy standard and the curriculum, the Australian curriculum and the various state curriculums as well. and it shows both that the learning development all through the complexity of what should be taught or learnt at different stages of those developments as well. In terms of understanding the development milestones, this gives you a bit of an indicator of the swimming and water safety competence and those 3 different stages as well. So as part of the framework, we've identified 9 development milestones, which are 3 by 3, and they're really indicators that go across those 8 strands that identify the progression an individual is at any point in stage within that strand as well. It gives a good picture of where everyone is, but also allows for benchmarking to occur in terms of review of the gaps or further skills that's needed for anyone at any one time. It also guides the journey. So there is a journey here that individuals can take. It doesn't stop at 50 metres or 25 metres in terms of swimming, and it doesn't stop necessarily at just those physical skills as well. It's, as I said earlier, it's a holistic approach to reaching the different areas. For each one of the development milestones, there's an explanation as well. So there's a statement for each development milestone, and then there's an explanation. And to make this clear for you, I'll show you this diagram as well. And this gives the framework in one page, so to speak. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the strands for a swimming and water safety framework, and on the top there, you can see the three stages: the fundamental, acquisition, and application stage. Second to that, you can see the development milestones. At the end of the acquisition and application stage is these benchmarks, which are what has been adopted by the Australian Water Safety Council as the new benchmarks for swimming and water safety in this country. And obviously that reference group, which is a broader reference group, have adopted there as well. So to paint a picture for you, while this is a framework for all ages, for all types, certainly from a targeted point of view, the framework really looks at children in that primary group of individuals who are doing swimming and water safety up until the age of 12. We're looking at those red and green areas of all the different types of skills or development milestones that are applicable to those different types of children at a minimum. As you go across, that's where the key strands show a progression of that learning and the learning outcomes across the board. So you may just go to a primary school in lifesaving, or you may extend that all the way through to the application stage, what's sort of given there in the hazards and personal safety example as well. And it's not necessarily a vertical space as well when you look at a child's individual learning. So they might be on H4, which is hazards and personal safety, over here in terms of their hazards and personal safety, but their entry and exits, they may be over here. Their flotation, they may be over here, depending on the different way in which that child is learning and the different skills and abilities that they may do. Some of these skills we also note may take longer than others to achieve, based off an individual's ability at the point in time. So that gives that sort of style of that centred learning, the student-centred learning, able to move forward. As I said earlier, each of those elements of the strands has an explanation as well. So H1 here as the fundamental part, of the first part of the fundamental stage, is identifying aquatic environments at or near the home, obviously for a young child, but also some of these key skills here in terms of this includes where water can be found, and provide some specifics to that, and that's on every single one of those squares. There's further explanation to all these different pieces as well, and that's really helping shape the learning delivery, but also the assessment delivery for swim schools in terms of what that child should be learning, and what the swim school program should include as part of it. And there's been a lot of back and forth between the industry to try and get this right. There's a lot of things in here that may be different from what you're currently doing in that sort of space, and there's been some strong research and justification behind some of these areas as well, in terms of some things you should learn before others, for key reasons as well. So that has all helped shape what the framework is in this part. The other area, as I said earlier, is where the benchmarks lie in terms of that space. So the real key one there is the green one, which is the 12-year-olds. We've gone away from the school year, but also the age, to be more consistent across industry and schooling year. And that's really by 12-year-olds in terms of reaching that benchmark by the age of 12. And I'll show you those benchmarks now. So the three national benchmarks, the concept is that the 6-year-old one is a guide to that benchmark, and it identifies those areas. It's not necessarily because children enter swimming and water safety at different stages, and not every child will do swimming and water safety in prior to primary school. This is a guide for some of those skills that they should be learning if they have participated in swimming and water safety lessons as well. The next one there is really the key one of every Australian at the age of 12 years should be able to undertake these areas. So some of these have slightly changed, some of them have expanded, but it gives once again that broad understanding of what the sector and the experts in this space and the research in this space shows that every Australian at the age of 12 should be able to do these areas. And it's fairly consistent with what's happening internationally as well in this space, of broadening from typically a 50-metre swim used to be a key thing, but broadening a lot of those skills has been a key aspect of a robust framework in many different countries as well. The last one there is 50% of all Australians at the age of 17 should be able to reach those areas. One of the key things that we look at is we'd like this to be every Australian. However, the gap at the moment is just too large. As you saw from those original pieces of work in the research, we are talking about 10 and 15% of children who are currently reaching these different types of skills as well in this sort of space. The other one is the supporting resources. So when the framework's released and the framework will be released imminently, we're just chasing a final signature for the endorsement. If COVID hadn't happened, we would be in that space. And part of that release is a website. There's a range of videos which we've interviewed the key researchers. Justin Scarr, the chair of the Australian Water Safety Council, speaking about the framework as well, and some of the bits and pieces that went into the development of that framework. There's a range of resources in terms of PowerPoints to allow swim schools to induct their teachers and allow different organisations to induct them into the swimming and water safety framework and what that means for them. And as I said, there's some implementation guides or cheat sheets in terms of the aquatic industry, the schools and education sector, and those program managers, and very much the parents and the community and what they should expect as well. Available on mobile, but also obviously on tablets and website as part of that as well. Just finally, this is to give you, I guess, an idea of the organisations who've endorsed this type of framework. They are fairly significant, and they are the main players within the sector who've supported this framework from the beginning. It's been a big journey in this sort of space, but these are certainly the key ones in our sector who have signed up to essentially the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework formally in one way or another. And that's not to say that other organisations haven't in that sort of space, but it certainly gives you a sort of clear picture of the support behind the Swimming and Water Safety Framework. One of the big things that you're probably asking is what does this mean for us? What does this mean for the aquatic industry or our swim school industry? What do we do from here, and what do we have to do in this sort of space? In a very short time, the framework will be released through that that website and those supporting resources. It's a time for the industry to read up, educate themselves on it as well, and there's a range of different things that will be happening. Generally, from a teaching point of view, is that teaching resources and teaching updates should go through the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework to educate the sector as wide and broad as possible in terms of understanding that. At a program manager level, you should be looking at your programs. Should be looking at your programs, looking at the way in which you deliver and how does that meet the national benchmarks, or how does it lead to the national benchmarks, and can you provide some support of how your program aligns with the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework in that sort of space. There are some that have already started that process in terms of mapping their structure and their curriculum to doing that as well. In that sort of space, who've been involved in that process. For some people, that might be no changes or some very, very small changes. For others, they may be some significant changes that they really need to look at so that they're providing that consistent framework that the Australian community expects in this space as well. The other thing is this is not a change process for those that looking at change that's going to happen overnight. This is very much a long-term strategy for the industry, for the sector. It's a partnership strategy as well. It's a partnership strategy between the education sector in terms of government schooling and private schooling, as well as the aquatic industry in terms of aquatic facilities and swim schools. We know that there's a number of children that do their swimming and water safety in both locations as well, and there needs to be a blended approach to that in understanding how a child develops. But there's also, as we said earlier, there's also that learning that happens in a non-structured environment, in any sort of open water or closed water environment, by simply having fun and enjoying the water as well, and learning skills and knowledge through that way as part of it. What the benchmarks will do is allow us to review how we are progressing the Australian community to those benchmarks. So we know now with some of that fundamental research that was done with the original 83,000 students of the percentages that were reaching different benchmarks and reaching the new benchmarks, and approximately on a 3-year cycle, we'll look at those statistics and try and, as a sector, improve what those numbers are and get to those benchmarks of 100% or 50% of children in this sort of space being able to achieve those benchmarks as well. For those of you who haven't seen this before, it's probably early days. There's probably a lot of questions that you may have. I've opened it. I've left some time at the end of this presentation to try and answer any questions as well. But really, it's when you see the document as well, hopefully a lot of the information will become self-explanatory for you to get your head around some of this information. If we weren't in COVID times, there'd be a lot of these presentations occurring that were already planned over the winter period and leading into other conferences. If you want further presentations or you want further information as part of that, we're more than happy to assist in doing that as part of what the sector have signed up for as well. Just finally, separate from the Swimming and Water Safety Framework, given our current times, if you're not aware, Royal Lifesaving released a national document on Friday afternoon regarding an update to the IAS framework and for Learn to Swim and Swimming and Water Safety Framework. You also need to read that in relation to the range of documents that have occurred through the Victorian government and through Lifesaving Victoria and the like. But it gives you a bit of an explanation to help you in that sort of space. So for those of you who aren't aware, there's some further information, and that's available on the Royal Lifesaving Australia website as well. So thank you very much. Hopefully you got something out of that, and I'm more than happy to answer some questions if I can.
Well, thank you so much, Craig, for that really insightful presentation there. I know we're all really looking forward to that framework being available, as well as those really relevant supporting resources as well. So very much looking forward to those. I noted down a few things there as well. I do really appreciate how we are focusing on the holistic learning through that framework and focusing on the learning as developmental milestones and identifying progression as a continuous journey. I think for me as a past teacher, that really connected to me quite well, and knowing that learning to swim is a continuous journey and there are certain places that students can really excel at one point but maybe need a bit more work on in other points, and showing and understanding that that is just a continuous progression for that type of learning. So we have noticed a really strong connection to knowing that this is a national framework, but a really strong connection to the Victorian curriculum. So if some of you may already be aware, and some of you may have already looked over these documents, but Lifesaving Victoria recently collaborated with the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority, or known as VCAA, and we were able to develop a progression model document that outlines each stage of the Victorian curriculum, each of the levels, and how the curriculum in the health and physical education side of things connects with this framework and the different progressions along that side of things as well. So we will pop a link to that in the chat, a really fantastic one to have a look at, especially for our educators out there, just to understand those progressions and how both the Victorian curriculum and the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework connect together to show that continuous progression of learning for our students. So what we will do now is, I know that we had a couple of questions pop up in the chat during the presentation, so I will hand it over to our Swimming and Water Safety Education team to see if we have any questions that we can get to that Craig can answer during this session. Any further questions as well that you think of, please do pop them in the chat now.
Thanks, Caitlin. Jen here, and thank you, Craig. I had a few questions. Where do we locate the framework?
So the National Swimming Water Safety Framework, as it sits today, is available on the Royal Lifesaving Australia website. The new framework, which you saw the presentation for today, will be on that page imminently. As I said, we're just waiting for one organisation who've indicated their support, but have been tied up with COVID arrangements to do that, and that includes the testimonies that have been placed as part of the first release of that as well from those various organisations. So in the next couple of weeks, if you go to that, go to the Royal Lifesaving website and look for National Swimming and Water Safety Framework, you'll be able to see all those extensive resources that go with it.
Great, thanks. I'll pop that link in the chat as well. Another one was, we've got quite a few Swim and Survive partners on. How does it link to Swim and Survive?
Yeah, certainly. So as part of the Swim and Survive program, the Swim and Survive managers of each states and territories have been involved in a mapping document. There's a mapping where the framework there as well. But as part of that, Royal Lifesaving will undergo a review of all their programs to see how it best aligns with some of the progression and parts of the framework as well, to ensure that A, that progression of learning is there, B, the student-centred learning, but also some of the lessons that have been learnt throughout the development of this framework are applied to Swim and Survive as well. But at the moment, Swim and Survive already aligns to the previous National Swimming and Water Safety Framework, and we'll continue to do that with this journey as well.
Awesome, thank you. And there was probably just one more comment which you've kind of answered. If we could have links to all these documents shared out this week, that would be amazing.
I would have loved it. It probably would have happened. This probably would have happened. We originally, some background for you. We originally were chasing a minister sign off, and then the federal minister lost their place, and that didn't happen. And then obviously we had bushfires, and that basically took off any sort of ministerial support or launch for the program as well. And then we were ready to go in February, late February, with the program with a industry-wide endorsement. But obviously COVID's happened as well. So but I can say that through the mix of the last sort of 2 to 3 months, all the different organisations have chipped in with their endorsements and coming through, so which is very pleasing to note as well.
It is great. Thanks, Craig. And that was the end of the list.
Oh, that was easy.
It was.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to Jen and Craig for gathering those questions and answering those questions as well. So it does look like we have come to the end of our webinar today. What we will let you know is that you can contact us at any time. As always, any feedback, questions, any ideas for topics that you would like to see or hear about on these webinars as well, please do contact us at schoolswimming@lsv.com.au or give us a call at 9676 6940. Our upcoming topics for the next couple of weeks. Next Wednesday, we will be joined by Mel, a member of our education team, who will be discussing the CPR and first aid for kids at home, as well as virtual sink or swim and the Everyday Lifesaver app. The following week, we will be joined by Trudy, who is another member of our education team, who will be talking about how we can teach water safety and life-saving skills in inland areas. Please do stay tuned for the 1 hour swim teacher PD that we did mention a couple of weeks ago. It has been delayed, as some of you may be aware, but we are working to ensure that it is relevant and practical for teachers, and please stay tuned as we will send out updates to our mailing list regarding this. So if you would like to join our mailing list as well, please do email us at that email address, schoolswimming@lsv.com.au, and we can add you to that so you stay up to date with all the information regarding future sessions and future PDs. So last of all, I would like to say a very big thank you to Craig Roberts for joining us today and giving us a very insightful presentation about the National Swimming and Water Safety Framework. I know I'm really looking forward to that being launched very soon, as well as those supporting resources as well. Thank you to everyone for joining us again this week. As always, please stay safe, stay healthy and stay connected. This is a fantastic way to do all three of those things in the safety and comfort of our own homes. So thank you again to everyone, and we will see you next week.